Okay, so we're on week 10 now of 10 foundational meditations. This week is called self-inquiry, and it really is the logical conclusion to everything we've done up to this point. The prototypical, the most famous way of doing self-inquiry is to ask yourself the question, who am I? And let's just think about that in a normal, analytic kind of way, an intellectual kind of way. Why is that an important question? Well, it's a question that needs to be answered, and for you to answer almost any other question. We don't realize this because we've assumed an answer to the question of who am I? We assume we know who we are in the way that we behave, in the way that we act, in the way that we carry ourselves through the world. But if you thought for a second, what if I don't know the answer to that question? Then you will start to realize how important that question is. You can't really answer the question, what should I do? Unless you know the I part of that statement. What should I do? Well, who am I? Right? What will make me happy? Well, until you know what me is, until you understand the structure of me or what me's relationship is to other things, you can't understand how to make me happy. How can I end suffering for myself? Well, that is entirely dependent on what type of entity you are. So we land on this world, we're sort of born, right? But it's really like we crash land on this foreign planet. And when we're a baby, we don't know. We just don't know. We don't know anything. We don't know what we are. We assume we're sort of everything, probably. And slowly we get answers. We're told answers to who and what we are. Oh, I am different from my mother. I am different from my father. And then as we go along, we're like, oh, I'm the one with this name. I'm Chris. Or I'm the one that, is good at math. Right? I'm the one that's scared of heights. And so we get a series of instructions on what and who we are. But we've seen over the last 9 weeks that we are not what we thought we were. We've seen, at least intellectually, and if you do the practice, you will see it directly. Oh, I am not my name. Well, that's for sure. But I'm also not my thoughts. I'm not my feelings. I'm not strictly my body. And we've given ourselves the tools to explore the entire world inside and out to figure out what we are. And so we realize this little bit of logic that seems so innocuous when you mention it, but if you apply it over and over again, it revolutionizes your understanding of yourself and the world. I observe my mind. Therefore, I am not my mind. I observe my feelings. Therefore, I am the observer of the feelings, and so I'm not identical to my feelings. And we get good at mindfulness. What we get good at first is observing everything that's happening in the present moment, being present with that experience. And therefore, we get good at recognizing, there's a little shift here. We get good at recognizing that I am not my experiences, that I'm not wholly identical to my experiences. So we've set ourselves up for a more direct question. If I'm not all that, then who am I? So there's a practice called neti neti, and not this, not that is what that practice, what that means. Not this, not that. And mindfulness sets you up to be able to do neti neti very well. So mindfulness allows you to look so closely at your life that nothing remains hidden. There's no longer any secrets in your experience. And then you can go, all right, where am I? And you go, well, I'm not that. I'm not this wallet. I'm not this glass of water. Right. I'm not this anger. I'm not this fear. I'm not this sadness. I'm not this thought about myself. I'm not this narration. I'm not this image I have of myself. I'm not this story. Neti neti. Not this, not that, not this, not that, not that, not that, not that. Okay, so mindfulness leads into neti neti, leads into the question, well, then who am I? In some spiritual circles, this has become almost cliche. So you have to let go of what you think you know, even so as a normal human being or as a spiritual practicer, right? You have to let go of thinking you know what this question means. And you have to ask it authentically. I know I'm here. Like there's nothing more obvious than that that something is happening right now, that I'm here. But what am I? Sometimes that's a better way to ask the question rather than who am I? What am I? The one way of thinking of what we're doing in meditation is investigating ourselves, getting very, very clear about who we are. And that's at all the levels of how we describe ourselves. So mindfulness in one way is very honestly allowing us to explore our old self, the like our psychology and our emotional patterns, our desires, our beliefs. That's not the point of mindfulness, but mindfulness builds you the skills that allow you to most clearly see yourself, that small self. And we all love doing that. People love astrology and tarot cards, and they love psychologists, and then they have those little. You remember when the internet started, or when I think it was Facebook started, and it was just everyone would send you a quiz. Which Lord of the Rings character are you, or which friends? I don't know, whatever, right? And that's all because we like this idea of someone telling us who we are. It's important to us. And so mindfulness allows us to explore that in concrete detail. Oh, wow. I'm constantly telling myself I'm a jerk. That's something I learned by paying attention to my mind. Or boy, I really react badly when X happens. Or, wow, that's really important to me. I really can see that because when I talk about this, I get so much passion and right. So mindfulness allows us to explore that part of ourselves. And that's an important part of human development and becoming happier and healthier and stronger. And that's why mindfulness is useful even if you don't want it spiritually. Like if you just want to improve your life in a simple way, it's incredibly useful that way. But there is something that you have to be warned about, is if you really diligently follow the practices of mindfulness, eventually you're going to also realize, as you're realizing that I react like this to that, or I really care about this, or I have these thoughts or these feelings, you will slowly be creating separation between you and those experiences. And you'll slowly be realizing, okay, yeah, that's how the pattern plays out in my experience. But actually, I am somehow more than those things. I am more than my desires. I am more than my beliefs. I am more than my pains and my suffering. I am more than my body. And that takes you into the next stage of kind of spiritual practice. And I use this word spiritual. All I mean by that really is, what am I really? What's the deepest question you can ask? That's what I mean by spiritual. It doesn't have any religious connotations. It doesn't really even have any metaphysical connotations. It's just what is the deepest thing about me that I can connect with? And after we've done mindfulness for a while, you'll either start to realize it intellectually at first, or you'll see it directly. I'm more than I thought I was, or I'm less than I thought I was. One of the two. I'm not. This narrative about myself does not capture me properly. So everything I said so far, if you've been following along now, I know Constant, you've just arrived week 10, so it's okay if you don't follow everything I'm saying. Same thing on Instagram. But if you followed along these weeks, it actually is pretty logical what I'm saying. It's not that hard to grasp. It follows from, you could think it out, right? You don't necessarily have to see it to at least understand what I'm saying. But there's a paradox or a big puzzle or a big mystery in the center of what I'm saying. Because what I've essentially said is, you are here, you're maybe the most certain thing you can find, but you can't find yourself. Paradox, right? If you look all the way through your experience, and I've given you the tools now, you have the tools to look in your whole experience, in your body, outside of your body, in your mind, outside of your mind, in your emotions, outside of your emotions, giving you the tools to look everywhere, and you can't find yourself that way. You can't find yourself in your thoughts, not your real self. So there's a mystery here. There's something is missing, right? So the third way you can ask this question, who am I, what am I, or where am I? That's actually the way I started with this. Where am I? And it's almost like a, where in the world is Carmen Sandiego, or where's Waldo? Or where Carmen, is that what it is? That's not what it is. It's something like that. Where am I? There's someone missing. Something important can't be found in the way that our mind likes to find things. So just the recognition of that mystery. If you don't taste that that's mysterious yet, that's okay. just the recognition of that mysteriousness, just tasting that, oh, wait, that is weird. That is a mystery. That is a step. That is a realization. That is an insight that you will get by doing these practices. If you're not tasting it now, that's okay. But I'm telling you right now, you don't know what you are. And if you don't know what you are, you don't really know what anything is. And although that could be scary or seem unhelpful, it's a great blessing when you realize that. So self-inquiry practice I'm teaching today sort of leaves off where mindfulness ends. Or you could think of mindfulness as the first stage of self-inquiry. Mindfulness allows you to do neti neti. That is, you ask yourself, who am I? And then mindfulness is the first place you look. That is, you first look in your senses. You're like, well, who am I? Well, am I a basketball player? Well, am I a, meditation teacher? And well, if I wasn't a meditation teacher, would I still be? Yeah, I guess I'd still be. Like, so you might do some mental stuff. And then you just start looking like, well, so self-inquiry, the real self-inquiry practice, the direct path practice, that is, it's a meditative technique that's taking you directly to the deepest question, picks up where that leaves off. But why is this a more difficult practice to get your hands around? It's because there's no more to say. I will say a lot more, but there's no more really to say after you've done all the neti neti, right? This is one reason that Buddhism is not a Buddhist class, but Buddhism is one of the traditions that really explores these kinds of questions. And Buddhism ends up with the answer that we're a non-self, right? Often described as no self in the West. And what that means is we're not any of the selves we could describe, to put it simply. Now, to put this in the terms of what we've already talked about, we talked about rest states, and I talked about ground states, and then I talked about zero states. And zero states are things that you could focus on that have no content. So self-inquiry practice is a way of focusing on a zero state. You ask yourself, who am I? And then you find out that it's not going to be any sensory experience. And so now you're turning your attention to something that is not a sensory experience. Who am I? Look as long as you want, right? First, you can look as long as you want everywhere around, right? Go look under the couch, go look in the mirror, go look, in your mind, look, right? Until you get exhausted tired of looking. Then you can ask yourself, okay, well, but I know I'm here. Who am I? Now your attention, if it's really exhausted with looking through your sensory experience, has to turn to a zero state, to a state of non-sensory experience. This is the great mystery that's at the center of your life. This is why Lao Tzu said, the one who knows does not speak, and the one who speaks does not know. Because what is true with a capital T about yourself with a capital S can't be described. It can't be narrated. It can't be spoken about, except in the vague ways that I'm talking about it now, or the vague ways that Lao Tzu is talking about it, except in paradox. So we don't expect my words here to be able to explain to you what I'm talking about. What the question is offering you is a pointer towards a way of experiencing your life. Okay, so I'm going to detail now just the way that we can do self-inquiry practice. I'm just going to go over this briefly. First of all, you can ask any question you want in a self-inquiry practice. As I said, I've already given you who am I, what am I, and where am I as options. And those are the famous ones. The who am I question is the central self-inquiry question. Self-inquiry. Who am I? Self and I. But the same kind of practice I'm about to teach could be applied to any other question that's really important to you about the true nature of things. And you might find that something other than who am I is more vital to you. Like, what are you striving for in your life? Are you striving for freedom? Is that like, what is the basic thing you're striving for? Are you striving for comfort? Are you striving for love? And you can ask those questions as well. And again, you might begin, what is love? And you can begin an intellectual story about that. And you can look around for it and you can find feelings that might be associated with it. And that's all mental answers to that question. But if you want to do self-inquiry practice about what's love, then what you're doing is you're asking yourself the question, what is love? And then you're only allowing an answer that is 100% certain. That can't be argued about. What you're asking is to be given the experience of love, or to be given the experience of freedom, or to be given the experience of pleasure, or to be given the experience of who you are. Direct contact, direct access to the truth of this fact. What is beauty? Ah, that's beauty. That, right? No experience, no thing you can point to. Now, I understand that this sounds, I don't know. It's not very concrete. So to make it concrete, I want you to think about it this way. Here's two metaphors for this practice. Those who have worked with me for a while have heard these metaphors before. But one is like, we're out in the deep ocean and we have a fishing rod with a very heavy lure. And the lure is the question we ask. And we say, oh, I'm going to put this lure on. This is the who am I lure. Or this lure on. This is the what is love lure. And then we're going to cast that lure out into the ocean and we're going to let that reel unspool. And that lure is going to sink deep, 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 deep down into the ocean. So what do we have to do? We have to be patient. Fishing is often considered a kind of meditative activity. Literally, we have to be patient. We have to let that lure sink deeper and deeper and deeper and just have to sit there. And there's nothing else we can do, right? We've put the lure in the water and it's like, now you just wait. And you let that lure sink. And so you have to be patient enough not to pull the lure in and start over, or not to, think there's something you need to be doing or should be doing. The casting of the lure is the practice, and then the waiting for the answer Now, unless you really care about the question, you won't put the right lure on the line. So you have to ask a question that means something to you. So if who am I doesn't mean anything to you, find a different question. You have to ask a question that means something. That's how you'll get the right lure on the line. So a way to think about this is you are asking a question, but because you've realized that your mind, your normal mind can't answer the question, you have to accept that part of this. Your mind can't make the fish take the lure. Your mind can't do that. You have to just wait and let the question do its work. So if once you've accepted that part of the practice, then you've essentially sent a message to your unconscious nervous system to start working on this question for you. And there's a kind of patience and trust that's required in this kind of practice. And there is a focus here, right? Just like with fishing, you can't walk away. I know there's some kinds of fishing you can, but some you got to be right there. When that line gets nibbled on, you have to be right there, ready. So this is still a concentration practice, but it's a zero state concentration. You're concentrating on something you cannot see. You're putting yourself in a state of trust and openness to your unconscious. And if you want to put it in more spiritual terms, you can. You're putting yourself in an state of trust and concentration and openness for that the universe will give you what you need, or that God will give you what you need. Well, however you want to think about it. So that's one metaphor. Another metaphor is to think about it literally like the question is a little program you're sending into the computer of the universe or of your unconsciousness to go do the work to figure out the answer to this question. And what we are asking for ultimately is a way of experiencing the world, not an intellectual answer. You will not get an intellectual answer. You will get a shift in your experience of yourself and the universe. That is the goal of this practice. When you ask, where am I? You want to experience your awareness, here-ness. Like where's the here, right? You want, when you say, who am I? You want to experience what it is to be you. Or what am I? Same thing. Now, I haven't looked at this in a while, but my teacher, Ajishanti, did this practice a lot. And he would actually do it with a journal, and he would write, but he would only write again when he wrote something that was absolutely certain. And what you'll find is you can only write you can't write very long when you write only what's absolutely certain. And then you hit a spot where you're going, and then you're in this space of uncertainty. You're in the space of waiting. And essentially what you're requesting then is, universe, only give me truth. I don't want any bullshit from the mind. This is a fairly, you have to really want this. You have to either have practiced really well with the mindfulness so that you have already let go a lot of your attachment to mind, or you just have to really want to the truth without the bullshit. And then the mind, the unconscious, the computer of the universe will work on it for you. And will try to figure a way to give you the truth without the bullshit. I'm sorry, I keep swearing, but that's it's really, but the mind is a bullshitter. trying to come up with a story that'll make you feel okay. And sometimes it comes up with a story that makes you feel awful, but your mind thinks it's actually better than the alternative, right? So when we do this practice, and we're about to do it, the fundamental self-inquiry question would be to ask a question that's authentic and important to you. And then you don't need to repeat it over and over again. You just ask it once with feeling. And then you wait. And yes, if you find yourself totally lost and forgetting what you did, you can ask it again, or you can just turn your attention back to the line you've already sent out into the ocean and remind yourself you're waiting for this truth. As a preliminary practice, for instance, you can ask yourself, what is love? And you can look for it in your body, and you can look for it in your mind. That's okay if you want to do that. Go ahead, look for a while. You can look for years if you want, until you get tired. And that's definitely one way to practice. That's the indirect way of practicing. But as a way of doing self-inquiry, it's not useless to do that for a little bit at the beginning, to remind yourself, what is love? And trying to feel it and trying to find it. What am I? Trying to feel it, trying to find it, looking in the mind and reminding yourself, oh yeah, I'm not going to find it there. And slowly you're letting go of all the places you normally look for answers and waiting for grace. When you find yourself, or the answer to any of these deep questions, you'll realize that because the answer to these questions is not in your narrative and not in the normal bullshit, that none of your problems exist in this true self. None of the reasons for your suffering exist in this true self. None of the reasons for your sense of lack of freedom exist in this true self. None of your reasons for feeling separate or unloved or not being able to love exist in this true self. Because those are all in the narrative. And so we let all that, we leave all that behind when we really connect with our truest self. And we find ourselves in a place of perfect freedom, of perfect okayness, of absolute love, of boundlessness, infinite nature. Okay, so we're going to sit here in a second. And I invite everyone to try this practice. It doesn't have to be your main practice. You might find right away that it's vital to you. And then, yeah, it can be a practice you do regularly. You can find right away that it's just frustrating and annoying, and you need something that's a little bit more concrete. And we have all these other concrete practices that will move you in this direction slowly. All right, I'll see you in the meditation.